to talk about our kids' health. It is absolutely front and center on so many of the moms that I know, and we're talking about so many different things, the main thing being COVID. But I want to first tell people a little bit about you. You are a pediatrician, but not just a pediatrician, you're a concierge pediatrician. And then you've also added on to your business this incredible med spa for mothers, because in order for us to take care of our kids, we got to take care of ourselves, ladies. It's not that simple. And this incredible online educational feature with these incredible answers to questions so many moms ask. So we're going to cover all that today, but I want to start by talking about your family, because that's how we know each other.
Right.
Our daughters are freshmen at Episcopal together, and we are on this journey of raising teenagers. And then, of course, you have your amazing son who is starting in a new school also. So let's talk about back to school health. Tell us where most of the parents you're talking to right now are in their minds with back to school health.
Wow, thanks for having me. And that's a loaded question, but I can tell you, obviously COVID and
Yes.
obviously masks, I think are the two big, the big things going on right now with back to school and health. And so my son is in middle school, so he's starting 6th grade, but he goes to a small private school, which did mandate masks. And I think I was actually very glad that they did, because most of the kids are younger, obviously, because it is elementary and middle school together. And so those kids are not yet able to get the vaccine. And so I was very glad that they mandated. I personally think that it's either an all or none thing. Because when you give options to a kid, they're not going to wear it. So I think that the schools are covering, their back by saying, oh, we recommend it, but honestly, nobody does it. So in high school, it's recommended. In our high school, Episcopal is not mandated. I was a little nervous at the beginning, but I do feel a little bit better, because I do think a lot of the high schoolers are vaccinated. And so, granted, I always put things into perspective, and people that know me know that I am definitely not a this way or that way. There's always, something sort of in the middle, and you always have to think of risks versus benefits with anything that we do, right? So you know that there's a lot of doctors that are like, absolutely, everybody has to get vaccinated, everybody has to wear masks, everyone. And I feel it creates a lot of anxiety to a lot of the parents. And unfortunately, you then move that anxiety to your child. And so I actually had a huge, actually every day I'm having conversations about this, but yesterday specifically with 2 moms over the phone for a long time. As she said, I am a concierge pediatrician, so I'm available to my patients, pretty much 24/7 by text or email or my phone. So a couple of moms called very worried, wanting to take their child out of school, have a 1st grader who goes to public school, who, the masks are not mandated. Her son wears it. Who knows, really, honestly, how much he wears it, if they're not really mandating it. And I can't blame him, I got to tell you that I went to a parent meeting at Episcopal, and it's my personal choice. If I'm inside a large crowd, even though I'm vaccinated, I do wear a mask because of this Delta wave. And I felt the peer pressure of there were 200 parents there, and maybe only 20 of us had masks. And I was like, oh, maybe I look silly. Maybe I need to take it off. So if I felt peer pressure, imagine how our kids feel, right? So you can't expect them to make this decision and be able to really say, this is for my health, and I'm going, that's BS. You really can't. So I feel like for kids in general, it's either an all thing, because when you told my 6th grader that everybody was wearing it, he was totally cool with it, and he was fine, and he wore it. He doesn't love wearing it, but he was okay because everyone else was wearing it. But when I told him that it was optional, he's like, well, I'm not going to wear it. So it's expected. So this 1st grade mom was very scared. Child is going to a public school, large public school. Needless to say, she's lost a child before. So obviously she is a little bit higher anxiety because of that. And she wanted to pull him out for online learning. And so I personally feel like every child should be at school, but again, risk versus benefits. If you are going to a large public school, if you are a nervous wreck and you are actually transferring that to your child. At the end, I did tell her, you know what, I think right now, maybe until this Delta, and hopefully it should only be a couple more months. And once the numbers, COVID's not going away, okay? It's not going away in a month. Whoever thinks that, they're pretty silly. But I do believe that we'll be able to, hopefully, with people that have vaccinated more and just with people that have gotten it more with Delta in general, in the next couple of months, hopefully we should be down where we were in the summer. And at that point, then maybe he can go back to school at that. I also did tell him, like I said, risk versus benefits. Honestly, the risk of your child getting severely ill from COVID is very, very small, okay? Just like your risk of your child getting the flu, it's also, not getting the flu, but getting severe illness from the flu, it's also very, very small. And so when a lot of people come to my office not wanting a flu shot because they're like, oh, whatever, my kid can get the flu and it's no big deal. But because it's been in the news like crazy, then everyone's so worried about COVID. But honestly, I feel like the risk is the same, or maybe even lower with COVID than it is with the flu. So risk versus benefit. Is it zero? No, it's not zero. And of course, if it's your child, it's 100%, right? And so you have to look at risk versus benefits and what you are okay with. I still feel it is mom's decision whether you want to vaccinate your child or not. And my second call of the day was a mom who actually was trying to switch pediatricians. Quick story, her son's an actor. Apparently, that's what he does for a living. He's just turned 12, and they were mandating the vaccine or they were not going to give him any more jobs. And so they said, you either get the vaccine or you can't come to auditions, you can't come to anything, you can't work. And mom didn't feel comfortable. And she said, I'm not anti-vaccine, but he just turned 12 and I feel like I want to wait. And I honestly think that's a reasonable decision. Am I against the vaccine? I'm not, but I have to take in consideration that this mom feels nervous. She goes, I got it, my husband got it, my older daughter's got it, but my son just turned 12. And I don't want people to pressure me and say that he's miserable and he's crying because he can't get any acting jobs because they're mandating that he gets the shot.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on. But point being, I think you need to look at your family, look at who are your kids around, are there any grandparents around, are your kids immunosuppressed? There's just a lot that goes into it. It's not just black and white. So hopefully you have someone to talk to that can help you make those decisions.
And I want to talk about COVID throughout the entire podcast, but I want to go even more broad than that and talk about what you said, because I received a recommendation when I was breastfeeding, and it did not suit me. It was really difficult for me. Bella had extreme reflux in my breast milk. I had to quit eating dairy, and then I was stressed, and someone said, if you're stressed, you're stressing out your child. And even though they say it's good to breastfeed for a year, for you and your child, it's probably best that you stop because it's not going well. So I think there's a lot of that application that we try to go to to the internet, we try to read what the answer is. And I really hear you. And as a mom, I felt that that's allowed me to give myself grace sometimes when it didn't feel right for my family.
Right. It is very important. We all know that we are all individuals and we're all different. And just like we are all different, all babies are different and all kids are different. So maybe what worked even within your own family, what worked with your first child might not work for your second child. And so nowadays, you can read all the books you want. Nowadays people don't want to read books, but they just search in the internet. So Dr. Google will tell you something, but that's not the same for every child. And so that's why I'm very glad that I have the practice that I have. So I really do have an hour for every checkup to really discuss the differences of what's going on. And then I feel like I'm a little bit open-ended. I know obviously the science and the medicine behind it, but like you said, sometimes, breastfeeding for some people, and I am 1,000% pro breastfeeding, but if it becomes more work and more stressful for you, then yes, your child might be getting worse reflux because they're stressed. Your child might be, not eating as much because of what's going on, and then they can't. So you have to look at the whole picture and the whole child and not just say breastfeeding is good. You have to breastfeed, make it work. And I feel like some people are still saying that.
Yes, they're so
Unfortunately.
committed to the rule that they don't actually consider everything around them. So
Right.
another thing for us was sleep. I mean, our family doesn't sleep in general, but we need sleep. And I had Dr. Rice with the Sydenham Clinic on to talk about how me sleeping more has changed my mood, me getting on the right hormones has helped me sleep. But I know we were talking about our kids. Now that they're in high school, they have these extracurricular. Your daughter has 8 p.m. soccer. They're not sleeping. I mean, let's talk about kids and sleep. Even from the time Bella was a baby, it was difficult. They'd say, let her cry it out. Girl, she could cry for 2 hours. She never stopped because she had reflux. And if I laid her flat, she hurt. So let's talk about sleep in kids.
Yeah, everybody needs sleep. And I think that's very, especially with adults. I mean, we feel maybe it's just society, and the more that you read, and I've gotten into since I became a business owner as well, I never thought, I mean, medical school doesn't ever teach you anything about business. I've been reading a lot of books, about that. And every book that you read, it's, do you get up, way earlier in the morning? And if you get up at 5, then you can get more work done. And so I think there's some truth to that of, having a morning routine, and that's a different topic. But at the same time, if you do that, then you have to think, well, maybe I need to go to bed earlier as well. And so does that work in your routine? Because absolutely. Some people might only need 6 hours of sleep as far as adults. Ideally, we say 8, and you always hear about 8. Kids, in elementary school, ideally, 10 to 12 hours of sleep is what they should be getting. And so unfortunately, we get this extracurricular. And yes, I have 2 soccer players, competitive soccer players. And this year, I'm just trying to figure out our schedule because both of them have practiced from 8 to 9:30, which means 9:30. But then by the time they finish and talk, it's 9:45. By the time we're getting home, it's 10. Right. So it's hard. And for my 6th grader specifically, it's a lot harder. I said, ideally, his bedtime last year was 9:30. Well, he's not even home till 10. Not every day, a couple of days a week. The other couple of days, it's earlier. But for my high schooler, it's every day until 10:30. And so we need to make sure that we look at our schedule, that we talk. I think nowadays our high schoolers, want to be on the phone, want to be talking to their friends, want to be on social media. And so, you're not a bad parent. And my daughter probably thinks that I'm the worst parent in the world, but I do have screen time for her. I do have a certain amount of hours that she's allowed to be on social media, because otherwise she would be on, all day, every day. And then she won't get her homework done, which is why they're going to school in the first place, right? We were talking about this. It's great that they're
socializing.
Right. It's great that they're socializing. It's great that they're, doing extracurricular activities.
Yes.
But, you've got to learn something too, while you're at it, right? So, our rule is, let's look at our schedule. If you really have soccer so late, maybe we should finish all our homework before, which means you might not have that much time to socialize and play around once you get home, from school. But that's what I did. But again, it was a lot easier when we were younger because there was only a phone, right? Like it wasn't as cool or whatever. But now there's so many more distractions. It's really difficult, and we have to realize that. So it really is a lot harder to be a teenager right now than it was in the 90s.
Absolutely. Okay, let's talk about family and relationships. You were born in the United States, but when you were 1, you moved to Argentina.
Venezuela.
I'm so sorry.
That's
Venezuela. Both beautiful places. I've never been, so I shouldn't interchange them, but they're both on my bucket list. So you're fluent in Spanish and in English, which I think is such a great value in this day and age, especially in Texas. But you were super close to your family. You're raising your kids as a very close-knit family. I find that, my heritage is Italian. We want the family together, but we also, as moms, still have to understand our role isn't to necessarily be liked by our kids and to do everything they want. So talk a little bit about your culture and family and how it is different now with the kids, where I feel like my parents were so much more strict on me, but Bella thinks I'm the strictest mom out there, and how things have changed.
Yeah, things have changed a lot, like I said, and I really do think, and it's funny that I said that, and my daughter has said it a couple of times, like, you had it so much easier, and of course at the moment you're like, no, I didn't, but we really did. I mean, I was just as busy. So I was a dancer before I was a doctor, and I danced 6 days a week, and I danced until, and I lived in Kingwood when I moved here to the U.S. You know, after. Again, like you said, I was born here, I moved to Venezuela, and I moved back here in 6th grade. And so I lived in the suburbs of Houston, and I actually danced in Houston. So I would have to drive, 40, 45 minutes to come, and sometimes we'd have rehearsals and stuff, and I wouldn't be home till about 11. But my mom had said, you do all your homework before you go to dance, but there was nothing else to do. You know what I mean? You came home, you could watch TV, but even watching TV was like, what's on? You know what I mean? Like, we had a certain amount of channels. Think about it.
I had my TV monitor because I would have watched TV all day. My parents said 1 hour a day. That's it.
Right. And really, it was just whatever was on. I mean, maybe if you had HBO or whatever. Right. But that was it. Nowadays, unfortunately, our kids don't even have to move. They just literally turn it on, which is what's really scary. And whatever YouTube thing they're watching or whatever series they're watching, it immediately switches to the next one. And that's really scary. And the reason that's really scary, and I really put it out there, and my daughter is probably mortified if she ever sees this, but she knows that that's my soapbox, because we are creating a society of addicts. We are. And so
the dopamine
we are.
You get being on your
because
phone.
You don't even, the phone, the YouTube, even the TV to me is better. And I do, because I feel when you watch a show, there is a plot. There is something, it's slower, so you at least are involved in a 30-minute show, in an hour show, or in a movie. When you're watching a YouTube video, and every year, or God forbid, TikTok, that's the worst, because they're so short. And if you think about it, now that I have started to learn social media, because it's unfortunately an evil that we business owners have to use, to get our point across, everyone that you listen to, if you noticed, I remember a year ago, they kept saying you have to do minute videos, and they all have to be 1 minute, no more than a minute, because I said, okay. And then it's 30 seconds, and then now it's 15 seconds, and now they're saying that it's 9 seconds. And I'm going, what can you do in 9 seconds that, like, you're actually getting some value? Because that's the attention span of those people. And so when you see these kids that are just doing this, their brain is so overstimulated constantly. And again, when I say with YouTube, they don't even have to move, because it just immediately goes to the next one. There's never an end. It goes to the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And so, unfortunately, it is a lot harder for us, because I feel like it's a daily battle. That you're right, we're not their best friends. I wish I could throw away the phone and throw away social media, but we can't do that either, right? Because that's just the way it is.
And to just say you're not going to be on it,
you can't.
It's just not even possible.
Right.
But I do think this wait till 8th idea of social media was great, and I did not do it. But having looked back, I love that some schools are getting together to do that. And with my biggest platform being fighting sex trafficking, I think the pornography that they see, not even intending to see it,
Absolutely.
that it just when the YouTube is rolling over, they're numb to this sense of what is ethically and morally okay. And then I've even heard about young boys having getting these medications, so because they can't get an erection without seeing porn. Like, there's also this new, it's just the whole thing. We could talk about that forever, but let's kind of go next to mental health, because it's something you and I have talked about. I've shared openly, and Bella shares openly, that she's struggled with high anxiety, and there's different things that trigger her. And certainly the phone, it used to be we went to school, we could be bullied there, or bullied by our neighbor, and then we went home in our room and we were safe. Now it could happen at any point. And that's also a big health factor with the youth and of our community, because of COVID even more, but because of social media.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so again, like I said, social media, phones, it's my soapbox. I could talk for hours. I have been to several seminars from lots of psychologists, expert in the area. And with girls, it's definitely social media and the phone because of what you just said. Because of, not only can you be bullied 24/7, but people, are also, even if it's not bullied, people are talking about you, you're worried, what did they say, how many people liked it? I just posted something, oh my God, like she didn't say she liked it, so it must mean she don't like me anymore, she's not my friend anymore. And so that creates so much anxiety, and there are actually studies, and it's really sad that the amount of suicide in girls and the amount of anxiety and depression in girls have exponentially grown ever since iPhone and social media came up. I mean, it directly correlates. And then with boys is games and gaming.
Yes.
And so with
and
boys,
that's also the way they're trafficked, is they meet
Correct.
people through that. That's not really, I have chills, a 12-year-old boy.
correct. And so boys, believe it or not, are really not into it. And you look at it, I mean, they're not really, and it's a story that someone put. So a girl goes to a football game, and they're both, a girl and a boy, and they both have, Instagram. And you see that the boy might take a picture of the game and say, hey, I'm here. might. They might not even care, not even turn the phone.
They won't even get on their
story. And
story.
the girl, the entire time they're in the football game, they're not even watching the football game, first of all. They're like, let's get a picture here, let's get a picture there. Do I look good? And the amount of pictures they take before they decide whether they can even post one, it's absurd. I mean, it's like, it can be sometimes close to, 50 pictures. And I see it with my own daughter. And then they might send it to a friend
Is
to
this
say,
good?
should I post this? Is this
approval,
good?
seeking, yes.
So how do you stop that? I mean, it's daunting, okay? And I'm learning, because again, I'm a pediatrician, but I'm a mom of a freshman, a first teenager daughter. So I'm learning as it goes, reading a lot, going through a lot of seminars, and unfortunately it's the world we live in. So unless we were to move to a cave somewhere, where there's like no phones, we also can't completely take the phone, because then you're dealing with the fact of I'm the only one, right? But I do think that we have to sit down with our kids and we have to have rules. And, my daughter hates it, but she does have screen time. It turns off at a certain time. She's only allowed to use, social media a certain time. And she knows that those are the rules. Every day she tries to break them. Every day she asks for more. I'm not going to lie to you. But it is what it is. And in the long run, eventually they will thank us someday.
Only because Bella doesn't ever watch my podcast can I say this, but sometimes I think she blames me when she really appreciates that I'm preventing her from doing something or letting her go to the party where bad things are going to happen. It's easier to just blame mom than it is to say, I don't think that's a good choice for me.
But actually, sorry to interrupt you, one of the seminars that I went to not too long ago, and I wish I could remember the guy, but I'll tell it to you because I love the book that I read, and then he came to Houston and I saw him. He actually says, give your kids an excuse to blame you, because then it's not on them.
Yeah.
And so it can be, oh, I'm sorry, my mom's crazy. I don't care. I can be crazy all you want. My mom's
Girl,
crazy and she doesn't
crazy.
let me.
Yes.
I'm good. But that way it gives them an out. Like if
I am
they're
crazy
if they,
in love with her to keep her safe and healthy.
Absolutely. But that way it's on us and it's not on them. And so you're giving them sort of an out. If they feel like this is not the right or whatever, in their mind, it's peer pressure. They want to do everything their friends are doing.
Yeah.
But if you say, well, my mom doesn't let me do that, or my mom turned my phone, then it's on us. And so that way, he says, he has saved a lot of kids from making wrong decisions. And I tell my daughter all the time, blame me, I don't care. Just like I tell my patients all the time, like, with newborns, even before COVID, we don't want people all over the baby and stuff. And I tell my parents, blame the pediatrician. It's not you.
She won't let me.
You're not being rude. Right. You're not being rude. My pediatrician told me that, you can't be, breathing on my baby or whatever. But that way, as a mom, you don't feel like it's on you. You're given permission. Blame me all you want. We're good.
So let's talk a little bit more about vaccines. I'm a huge advocate for people understanding autism. There's a group of people who believe that vaccines cause that. There's not been proof that I know of that says that. There's other things. People say that autism has come out more in kids now, but is it that we've broadened the spectrum? Let's talk a little bit about that rumor with autism and vaccines.
Yeah, so it's a big rumor. And so essentially it started because back in the 80s, I mean, it's been a long time, there was a physician, actually a gastroenterologist in England, who was doing some work on GI stuff. And it very, very small study. And somehow in this study, he came up with a conclusion that, the vaccines caused these kids to get autism. Ever since then, his license has been taken away. They have spent billions of dollars trying to duplicate these experiments to really show where it was. At the beginning, back then, there was a thing called thimerosal, which is actually a preservative that was on pretty much every vaccine. They really thought that they linked it to that, and so they took thimerosal out of all of the kids' vaccines. So currently in the United States, the only vaccine that has thimerosal is the adult flu shot. There's no thimerosal in any childhood vaccine anymore, to sort of like, if maybe it was a preservative, that maybe we're taking it out, and that didn't happen. And like you said, there's been, I mean, I would say billions of dollars, done research to try to prove, or maybe that there is some sort of a link between it is the MMR vaccine and autism, and nothing has ever happened. So theories that as physicians have is, one, we are diagnosing it more. We actually broaden the spectrum. If you can think of, I mean, I can think of plenty of kids back when I went to school that were the quirky kids, or the weird kid, or that's the antisocial kid, but nobody ever had a diagnosis for them. So nowadays, because we know that if we do early intervention, like by age of 3, some of these kids go along to be going in normal classrooms, do great, have great social interaction, I've seen it, and are just normal like any other child without a diagnosis. And so we really try to diagnose it early to see if we can get them into therapy by the age of 3. And so we're diagnosing more because we're trying to catch it more early, because as pediatricians are more aware than the older pediatricians. We're having questionnaires, we're asking all the questions starting, at a year. So when you first start noticing kids not talking or not interacting, it's usually after a year. I mean, there's no way when they're a baby that you can tell what's going on. And what happens at a year is when we give the MMR shot. And so it also has a lot of cause and correlation of the timing of when this vaccine happens. So a long time ago, someone said something might happen. Obviously fear, people are saying, oh my God. But there's been lots of studies, and nothing, absolutely nothing has proven that this vaccine causes autism. If you want my personal opinion, I do think genetics has a lot to do with it. And I mean, I don't know if a lot of physicians might agree with me or not, but I do think so. And I think that we know more and more about genetics nowadays.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So why is it, I always compare to diabetes, like why is it that, we know that something triggers a kid to be diabetic type 1. Why is it that I sometimes diagnose this kid as early as 18 months, which is really rare, or as late as 10 years old? Why is it? And I think, obviously they're born with this predisposition of having diabetes, and we always say it's probably a virus, it's some stressful something that triggered it to show up at whatever age, whether it's 18 months, 2 years. And so I feel like kiddos that, have autism are probably born, and we'll find out someday, because there's so much that we know with genes, maybe with this trigger or this gene. We have proven that it's very much genetic, looking at twins and looking at things. So maybe it is a virus, or maybe it is, something that maybe triggered it, where it was going to get triggered regardless, because it's in their genes. So a lot of my parents, granted I have a very small practice, are doing genetic testing on kids to just sort of know. There's also something called the MDTFR gene, which is a gene specifically of kids that react more to like inflammation or things like that. So I really do believe that there are some kids that react a little stronger. So I have some patients in my practice who have done this genetic testing, who we know that they have this gene, who say, you know what, I'm not anti-vaccine, but can we slow it down? Because we know that these kids, or some studies have shown that some of these kids that have this gene sometimes react stronger to inflammation. Why is it that some kids get wonderful fever with every vaccine, and some kids, it's like nothing? Everybody reacts differently, right? And so maybe it is something in the genes and genetic. And so I'm still very much towards the CDC schedule. My kids got it all together. But if I get a mom that comes and they say, I'm super scared and I'm anxious, I want to do vaccines, but is there any way that we can, kind of split them apart or whatever? I personally do, because I rather have them lower their anxiety level, do something that will make them feel okay as a mom, and still get the child vaccinated. So I will not say absolutely not, you have to leave my office. Now, if you come to me and say, I don't want to vaccinate my child till he's 10, then we have something else to talk about. And I say, no, I don't agree with that. But I do think that, something is genetic, and maybe some kids react a different way than others. We're all different, right? We're all, we started this conversation saying we're all different human beings. We all react differently. So we have to look at every person as a whole human and not just by what the book says.
Yes. So we've done some genetic testing with Bella. I did it with the Sydenham Clinic for me, and it's given me a lot of assurance and understanding of my journey. And with her, we found out that there were some chemical things, or that she was more predisposed to, maybe lower melatonin or lower dopamine and things like that do make you more anxious. So there's supplements that you can take. Let's talk about other things in kids and medicating kids. ADHDs. There's so many people that are adamantly against medicating. Some people are huge proponents. When is it right, and when is it okay to medicate kids?
I don't have the answer to that. I really don't.
Because there isn't an answer.
There is not an answer. Like I said, you have to look at your own child, and you have to see where they're at. I don't, and I really run when I hear that there's like a first grader, that they're medicating them. I think that nowadays, just like we are diagnosing and we are more aware of autism, I feel like teachers, and I don't know, I'm not a teacher and I'm not trained to be a teacher, but I feel like it's more ingrained into their, maybe, if a kid's doing this, this, and this, and oh my gosh, maybe they have ADHD. And so sometimes it's just a kid being a kid, honestly. It really is. And so I feel like our school system, especially the public school system, it's so overwhelmed, and there's so many kids maybe that they just don't have the patience or the time to deal with a child that might be a little bit more of a difficult kindergartner or first grader or second grader. And so at that age, I think you really have to look and see if the child is not being so impulsive to the point of hurting themselves or hurting others. I personally am very anti starting a medicine at that young of an age.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of other things that you can do. You can do behavioral therapy. You can, see what's going on in the classroom. Is there different changes that you can do of where the child could sit? Can you talk to the teacher and say, how do they react? Some of these kids, too, that are very impulsive or have attention issues, you can't say, okay, so Johnny, so I want you to go ahead and open your computer, go to page 1, then after that, highlight the second one. And
you tell Rob that? He couldn't do that.
Right, I probably couldn't either. I have a bit of ADD myself, and people do know. So, but I've learned to cope with it because he was very low. So I know that if I don't do things right away, I forget, it doesn't get done. If I don't write it down and I don't write lists, it doesn't get done. So, so teachers have to realize, and I think there's some amazing teachers that I have worked with in the past that know, and they know that for this child, maybe giving, a test that's 10 pages, they just shut down because they're so overwhelmed, they get distracted. Or I've had kids who they have a 10-page test, and they start the test and they won't finish it. I had a kid, actually, one of my patients, first grader, brilliant kid. And when he was in pre-K in kindergarten, he was, acting out. I think because he was bored. Because he was so smart that he was just over what they were doing. And so we figured out, I told Mom that eventually when he started actual school, they wanted him to be in GT, gifted and talented. But they couldn't because he would never finish the test. Because they would give him the test and he would start the first and he would get bored or get distracted and he would just not finish it. And so Mom was so frustrated and they wouldn't. So at that point I say, that's why it's important. And they were very reluctant as to get him tested for anything because people don't want a label.
Yes.
But having a label can help you so much. So it's not going to hurt them. And you know what? Now this kid has a label as having attention issues, and they gave him the test 1 page at a time, and he finished the test, and now he's in GT. And that's all it took. There's no medicine, no nothing that we can do before we run to get a medicine. Now, usually after 3rd grade, which is when it starts getting harder, if it's really a lot harder academically, if your child, is having a hard time, and we're doing, especially with girls, with boys, we tend to diagnose sooner because boys tend to have a little bit more of the impulsivity. A lot of the girls only have an attention issue. So they might get just overlooked as you're just a bad student. What do you mean? You need to study more. You need to study harder. And they're like, but I am, but it's just that they can't focus. And so it's important that if your child's having a hard time at school, get him tested first for learning disabilities.
Yes.
Then maybe for ADHD, talk to your physician first and then see if they can send you somewhere, because if they get him diagnosed, we can always start by, accommodations, changing things of how you do before you jump into medicine. But if that doesn't work, I've seen huge changes when kids get put on medication. A child who is so used to, I always get a bad grade, then eventually I've seen kids when they get into high school not try because they're like, why am I going to try? I'm still going to fail anyway. So their self-esteem is just down to 0, and they're very smart, and you can tell, but it's harder. It's like, I explain it to some kids. It's like you have your brain, and your brain has these connections, and you're missing a tiny little bit of connection. And if you take this medicine, sometimes it literally, and you do, I tell parents, you'll know right away, because this medicine doesn't linger into your system. It's either on or off. So you take the medicine, and it usually lasts for, depending on which one, 10, 12 hours, some of them 4 hours. And the kids know. And anybody that takes ADHD medicine, honestly, it's going to make you focus, because it ultra focus. So if I were to take that medicine right now, which I don't recommend anybody take it that doesn't need it, because it's a drug. It's
I've
not
heard
ideal.
That some kids are taking it that aren't ADHD so that they can focus more clearly and get better grades.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily work that way, but you will notice a difference. And so I asked the kids then, not the parents, and the kids a lot of the time say, yes, it's great. I mean, it's great. Like, people walk in and I'm not distracted anymore. I'm able to finish my homework. And then you get
Can
a
we
kid.
get that for Rob, Jeanette?
And then, you get a kid
exactly. I know.
who was failing, literally all of a sudden get A's and B's. And it's not that they were dumb. It's that they really were so distracted. Or my worst, the thing that I hate the most is when I hear kids do their homework and they don't turn it in. Because they forget, because they're so distracted. They leave it at home. It happens all the time. They leave it at home, or because of ADHD, they're also part of an organization. Part of it comes with it. So they're very disorganized kids in general. And so they might put it in their backpack, but then they're like, I don't know, I can't find it. I lost it. And I'm like, you did all this work and you don't turn it in. It happens all the time. And so part of all of this, it's a team approach, is talking to your doctor, talking to the teachers. A lot of times, if like right now in 9th grade, I mean, I'm sure you got it, Ariana was asked to have a binder for every class and this and the writers. And some kids that have really bad ADHD can't handle having 5, 6 binders, because it's just too much. So a lot of times they say, okay, you have 2. You have this comes home, this gets turned in, period. I mean, I don't care what your teacher says. That way you're organized and you only have 2 things to keep up with and not 10, right? But as soon as you finish your homework, you put it in the turn in folder. And when you go turn in things, you know that everything you need to turn in is there. As opposed to, I need to, so you have to figure out what works best for your child. But sometimes simplicity, it's what you have to do for these kids.
All right, so let's talk personal a little bit. I
Sure.
grew up dancing, and I love tap, ballet, and jazz, but you were really a dancer. That was your initial degree at UT. So dancing to medicine, it seems like such an interesting transition.
I get that told all the time. When I was dancing, what are you going to do, dance around the patients? So dance is my passion. I'm not going to lie to you. Taking care of kiddos is also my passion. But I do have to tell you that, my first love was ballet, and that's what I did, since I was 3. And, I carried it on to college. Originally, I wanted to go to, honestly, New York or LA. I had it all planned out. And my mom said, great, you can do that. But, if you stay in Texas, school's on me because, people that live in Texas realize that, we have it really good here. Education is really good and really cheap compared to a lot of other states. She was like, if you go to New York, then, great, good luck. Go get a, student loan, but I can't pay for it. So at that point I said, okay, fine, I'll stay in Texas. So I went to UT and I was a theater and dance major. Loved it. That's, what I did. My husband jokes that I have two lives because when I get around my theater friends, or my, artsy friends, it's odd and it's funny because they look at me and they're like, "You're a doctor," and I'm like, "But I'm not a doctor. I'm just Catherine." And I do get now that I have my own practice, and when I talk to people go, "You are Dr. Espana," and half the time I say like, "Hi, I'm Catherine." Yes. I am Catherine before I was a doctor, and because I decided to be a doctor doesn't mean that I'm any better than you or anyone else. It was just happened to be a career that I liked, and because I like kids. It all started, honestly, I love science too, but I knew I was going to be a pediatrician. There's nothing else. And I joke around with everyone. My husband's also a doctor. He's an OB-GYN, and he's a doctor. I'm not a doctor. And the reason I say that is because he could have done any subspecialty and been happy, and he loves medicine, like the art of medicine and everything that comes with it. Me, I love kids, and I love taking care of kids. But if I wasn't a pediatrician, I would not be a doctor. I wouldn't. There's no way that I could take care of adults. God, no. There's no way that I could be a radiologist. I mean, anything else. Like, I just knew that it was either that or it wasn't. Like, I would have opened up a dance studio, I would have done something else that involved kids.
Right.
Who knows what I would have done. Honestly, be honest, I went to, UT for dance. I tested out a lot of things my freshman year because I went, there was like ballet 1, 2, 3, and I went into senior ballet from the very beginning. I tested out all the Spanish, so I had a lot of credits, right? But I got scared when I thought, so I was the weird kid who was a theater and dance major, but all of my electives were like organic chemistry, like, all the pre-med stuff. Yeah. That usually is the other way around, right? Like your electives are like basket weaving or whatever. So I had really hard electives, and then I started once I was starting to take the MCAT, I said, oh my God, what if I don't get to med school? Like, what am I going to do with a theater and dance major? Like I don't need this if I really wanted to dance. Like, I could just dance.
Yeah.
You don't.
Right. You don't.
I
need
mean,
a
what do
major.
you do with
Right.
a theater and dance major? You teach theater and dance somewhere. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. So I said, what if I don't get into med school? Like, I need something else that I could work. By then I was already thinking of, when I first started college, like, you don't think really that you're going to get a job. You just
go and have fun.
Right. But by then I'm like, what happens? Like, what am I going to do with my life? So my logical thing was like, well, I'm going to go switch my major to be a kindergarten teacher, because I knew that I don't think I could ever be a kindergarten teacher now, but that's what I thought back then. So I went to the education building and I said, I want to switch my major. And they're like, okay, well, you have to do this, and it was going to like increase like a whole year because, obviously you don't need ballet to be a teacher. So they didn't count any of those credits. So then I said, forget it. I'm not going to, go to school for another year. So I dropped that. But I thought of that for a split second of doing education just in case. If I didn't get to med school, then at least I could still work with kids doing something else. But yeah, I knew that I was going to do it with kids.
Not only made it to med school, but you had very high marks and you've won many awards for being exceptional in your field, which is amazing. We've talked so much. We have almost run out of time, but we have to talk about the med spa because, as I said in the beginning, I think we haven't talked also about, but I also want to hear about your online thing. If for moms, if they aren't in a position to pay for a concierge doctors, they can still learn from you. And then women who, why as moms should we even worry about taking care of ourselves? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so that evolved because I always, like I said, through this concierge practice, instead of spending 10, 15 minutes with every parent, I have a whole hour. So I know the mom, the grandma, the dog, which I think is important. As a pediatrician, you become sort of part of the family. That's how it used to be. And so I love that I get to do that now. And so with that, you see it. You see when the mom, we all put ourselves last all the time. You take care of your husband, your kid, your dog. And if you have time, then maybe you might wash your face and take care of yourself. And it shouldn't be that way, right? And so I have become, as I'm getting older as well, we also start, wanting to, look a little bit younger and make sure that we're keeping up with everything. And so I've always been very interested in just skincare in general. I'm very not much into plastic surgery, but as like what you can do without having to open something up to take care of the moms. And the moms love it. So far, it's very new. We've only been open for about 3 months, and it's been mostly the moms from my practice because those are the only ones that know about it. We're working on a web page. We don't even have a web page, so we can actually tell people about it. But we decided to call it Mommy Med Spa. As of now, it's still in my office. But soon, if we feel like, it's too busy, then we'll, move to somewhere else as well. But I love it because I think that it's important, like you said. If you feel good, then you can take care of everyone else. If we are down and we're not feeling good, I mean, it's just proven that you have to exercise yourself. You have to take care of your body. You have to eat right. And heck yeah, we all have to look good too, because that's part of our self-esteem and part of us feeling better. There's a lot of studies that have happened of moms who, postpartum, you're so depressed, you're home, hormones aren't helping, right? And then you're also in your pajamas all day. And then once you get up and take a shower and put clothes on, like your mood changes just to actually, take care of yourself. They've also done a lot of those studies during COVID when people are like working from home and people were staying in their pajamas all day to work and they weren't getting as much done. And if you get up, take a shower, put clothes on and get out of your bed and you're taking care of yourself, you're much more productive.
I've always said that. Danette and I always say that we dress up to make ourselves feel better too.
Yeah.
And if you wear, another trick is we wear bright colors too, and that makes us feel better. Well, this has been so fascinating, and I have to share with everyone, I get to go on Saturday and experience one of her incredible facials. So I'm going to be posting that online, telling you guys how you can do the same thing, because I do take time for self-care, and I believe that I have to put the oxygen mask on me first in order to be able to take care of Rob and Bella and Grace Kelly and whoever else comes along that needs me. Is there anything, we've run out of time, is there any parting words? How can people find you? How could they connect with you?
Yeah,
and
so
even consider joining your practice?
So really quick,
client?
I know we've run out of time and there's a lot that we talked about. But for new moms or for anyone that's pregnant, my quarantine project was that I created an online course specifically for new moms that just answers all the questions. So you guys can find that. So I am on Instagram at Concierge Pediatrics and also Facebook Concierge Pediatrics. And so you can find me there. I try to be really helpful, try to post, even though, like I said, honestly, it's a love and hate relationship with social media. But try to do that because I think that's something good for the moms. And you can find information about the course there too, as well as we're in near Memorial Park area. So if you have a kiddo and want to see what our practice is like, give us a call. And I do free meet and greets and free prenatal appointments if people just want to come and meet me just to see if this is the right fit for their family.
Yes, and we, even with older kids, there's sometimes that we experience things with their health. I know Bella and I went through a journey where she was having stomach issues, and we went to so many different doctors. And I think it's important to have a strong relationship with your pediatrician to be the basis of all of that, because then you're able to, I've even called you for referrals for other friends of other people, neurology, different things, because when we don't think about our health until something happens.
Absolutely.
And then it's the most important thing, especially the health of our kids.
For sure, it is. But thank you so much this was fun.
Yeah, it was. I can't believe it flew by so fast. Thanks, guys. We will come to you next week. Keep on living the authentic life.